Okay. Oops. You good? You all set? Yep. Okay. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the North Branford Planning and Zoning Commission to order. In attendance is also alternate member David Hulkrin, Fran Leskovitz, Ron Sienna, Charlie Gunn, William Galdenzi, and Harry Dulac. The first order of business will review and approve the minutes from the October 2nd meeting. Did everybody have a chance to look at those over?
Make a motion, we pass the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That goes 4-0. I didn't vote on that. Before we get into the agenda, I just want to, there's one of the items, which is Planning and Zoning Application 2014-15-5. Oops, I'm sorry. Nope, that's not the right one. I'm sorry, 2014-15-6, that's a site development plan for the installation of propane bulk storage. That application was tabled from last meeting to the November 6th meeting. So if any, I just want to let everybody know that there will be no discussion on that tonight. You're welcome to stay, but that's tabled to the next meeting on November 6th, and that's going to be at
NBIS.
At NBS. So I just want to let you know, you're welcome to stay for the rest of our agenda.
How about the October 21st? Is there one?
November 6th is the next meeting.
November 6th.
Oh, yeah.
21st,
Oh.
you're thinking of is the inland wetlands
October 22nd.
commission.
Okay?
22nd.
Yep.
Housekeeping done?
Yes. Yep.
I'd like to make a motion that we change the agenda to pick up the discussion with the Economic Development Commission on concepts for 1599 Foxton Road.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes 5-0.
Good evening. Mike Wallace, Town Manager, and I do have a member of the Economic Development Commission, Jan Finch is here with me as well. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity. This is just merely informational. The Economic Development Commission felt it would be a good idea for us to come forward to give you sort of a brief update on what they've been working on and let you know what the schedule is going forward. And I apologize, the consultant we're working with, Alan Plattis of Yale Urban Design Workshop, couldn't be here, but we would like to invite you to the next round of workshops, or the next charrette, which will take place on Saturday, November 1st at the MBIS cafeteria where we were the afternoon of November 1st. That is the same location we had for the first charrette.
What time?
What time?
That is going to
1
be
to 3.
1 to 3. Thank you. And so since that time, the group's been working, and the commission's been working with the consultant, doing a lot of due diligence, if you will, in terms of background, marketing analysis, looking and reviewing at environmental phase 2 study that we had done, the town had done several years ago, and proceeding with gathering as much information as we can to bring to the next charrette, including what we call concept designs, if you will, looking at what would feasibly be put on the site, and that is included for your review today. And also, I'm here to extend an invitation to, if you ever want to come to the Economic Development Commission as members, they'd love to have your input. And we do have the input of Carrie's input, and we appreciate that as liaison to your commission. I think it's very helpful as we go forward to understand, the zoning regulations and different constraints that we have with this site. One of which clearly, and I think you understand, is the traffic pattern. And so we did have a meeting with the Department of Transportation on a preliminary basis that was very fruitful in looking at entrances and exits. And as you can see, well, as you know, the layout currently only has one entrance to it, and it's problematic because it comes off of Route 80. So we're looking, as you can see in what we submitted in the latest design tonight, looks at trying to create access off of 139 in addition to the Route 80 entrance. That's got some work to it. DOT would be agreeable in concept to that, subject to further review and further detail of that. But what we're trying to do, and what the commission is trying to do, is get through the charrette, the second charrette, incorporate the comments that were given on the first round in terms of trying to incorporate open space and some small town character or North Branford character into it, so it's not just going to be slapping up any old box retail that we can on the site. So in this particular concept, which is the latest, you'll see that they've got that open space, green space, if you will, right up front near the entrance at Route 80. And it is a mixed-use concept design, looking at trying to do commercial and residential in there. Again, these are guidelines and concepts that will really depend on what happens in the selection process when we get to a point where we select a developer in that. But as a whole, we'd like to try and have some guidelines to direct what we'd like to see on that site. As you can see, this one, they're anticipating what looks to be about 29,000 square feet of commercial space with 11 residential units and about 115 cars, give or take. So we didn't want this to be something that kind of hits you at the last moment, or a developer comes in. We'd like your input along the way, certainly. Any guidance would be helpful. Again, it's a work in progress, and what we anticipate would be a charrette process that would kind of finalize the ideas and concepts, have the consultant develop a final report for us that we would use in terms of developing an RFP process for enticing a developer. That would, I would imagine, be sometime in the January, February timeframe. It may be sooner if possible, but that's where the group is headed at this point. So it's definitely a work in progress, but that's where we're at this point. Is that anything I left out?
Well, the topography changed with the work on Route 80, and it's not an easy site to develop. There's water going through there. There's it's fairly steep. It's small. It's almost 6 acres, but when you're trying to get everybody's wishes in there, it's not easy. But it's developed over the last since January, when we had the charrette, and I think what we have here would work. We're going to need your help as far as reviewing things with zoning and all of that, because we picked up on some of it, but I know that we certainly don't know the way people do. So we'd like to work with you if you can come to any of our meetings. Carrie, has been great to have her there. And she has learned a lot about your zoning already, so I'm quite impressed. So anyway, if you have any.
We'd be happy to share any information with respect to the market analysis, environmental. We even had an interim planner put together and compiled a pretty good report for the site, and that's helpful in terms of the history and so forth. So happy to share any of that information with you. Yeah. Absolutely.
Does this proposal include the current town hall, or the old town hall?
Yes.
Is that building to the right, the funeral home?
Yes, but both buildings as a, well, it depends on the developer. The old town hall, probably not, I don't think it's, historically or architecturally significant at
Mhm.
this point, but the back building has often been talked about in terms of renovating or replicating, and keeping on the site. Really depends on the developer, historic tax credits, and whether or not the numbers work financially. But as it, you understand the elevation, and the developer thought that is a great sight line, and to have something which is historic and architecturally significant, I think, to try and incorporate or reincorporate into the site development would be a nice feature. I mean, it has a lot of history there.
Hey, Mike, on the intersection of 139 and 80, there's a circle. What is that circle?
Oh, it's just on the map, on the diagram there. That's just sort of a vertical representation that they would try to make it look like a tower of some sort. Just adding in there. I don't think it has any functional capability. It's more aesthetics, I think.
Like a bandstand or something like that?
No, because it would be second
Silo.
level or high, like a silo, right? Yeah, something like that.
It's very small, but there will be larger drawings at the charrette. And we had actually thought that the consultant would be here tonight with computer drawings, but he is not. So you can get an idea anyway of what we have in mind, and we're open for any suggestions.
Did you say there were two entrances? I mean, one entrance? It looks like there's two.
Well,
One 139, one to 80?
Well, you have the current one on 80, and then what they were proposing in this diagram, this concept, is to make a cut and at 139, yeah. And I believe it, depending on what DOT will allow, it probably only in off of Route 80. I mean, again, it's subject to further review. It's a tough proposition to get, to try to come out and make a left-hand turn out of there.
And this incorporates Wall Field, which you are aware of, I'm sure.
It's like you retain the original concept from 10 years ago, had this like green atmosphere with the intersecting sidewalks with a flagpole. It looks like that still
Right.
exists in this
We're
concept.
hoping, to do something.
Yeah.
Like, again, the terrain has changed, with the road there and so forth, so.
There's always talk of trying to link that to the triangle piece up by Dairy Queen as well. I know there's a 139 in between, but like with a sidewalk somehow to bridge
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
the two, 'cause that's kind of wasted space otherwise.
Pedestrian walkway going across.
Well, people want a community center down there. I mean, that was what we got in January from when, and that was a very well-attended meeting. I don't know if some of you were there or not, but there were definitely more than 100 people there. And they were all very active and interested, so it's taken us a little while, but hopefully we will move a little faster now.
And the way they've laid it out in this particular case with, parking along the boundary line of the property and on the back side of it where that rail or corridor is, what was that, the
Trolley line?
trolley line?
Trolley
It
line.
was trolley line that potentially in the future could, make for great access in terms of recreational purposes, so they've incorporated that. And those were certainly comments that came out, that if you can, add those type of amenities, that would be great. Now, whether you get that all in the first phase, but probably not, but, phase or future phases. And we're not entirely sure if it's possible, but something we'll look at.
I think one thing this commission talked about too, in the facade concept, talking about was having exactly what you have, like the building in front faces the road with the parking in the rear, so you don't drive by and just see parking lot with this beautiful
Right.
building behind.
Right.
You drive and see the nice building, you don't
Yeah.
really see the parking lot.
Right.
That
I-
incorporates it.
Yeah, and a lot of thought has gone into, right, the visually, you know, how it appears to you, what you see, the sight lines, so forth. But again, right, and that I'm sure will be one of our guidelines when we get into it, that we want a developer we work with that knows, you know, that they be able to incorporate different materials and different designs in there. It's something that looks aesthetically pleasing.
Anything else? Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your time.
And for the public, the charrette they were talking about, that's on Saturday, November 1st at NBIS, 1 to 3 p.m. That is open to the public, so if you'd like to join in that, you're more than welcome. That's November 1st, 1 to 3 at NBIS.
Thank you, Eric.
Okay, next order of business, we're going to go to old business? Or do we-
Yes.
Okay, old business, PZ application 2014-15-5, proposed amendment to section 54, alcohol beverages of North Branford zoning ordinance.
Hello, I'm Felipe Pastor. I'm with the law firm of Cohen and Acamboro. I was before this commission a number of weeks ago, and I listened to some of the suggestions that the members of this commission had, and I met with the planner extensively, and we discussed a number of things that we could do to make a change to not only this regulation, but also a use table that relates to the uses in here. I just would like to hand out a color-coded copy, which is a lot easier to understand. I wanted to show the original legislation, the initial changes, and the follow-up changes. They're in black, red, and blue, so it's easier to understand the generational changes. Or you have, but
Yeah.
this is a bigger one, so it's easier. So,
We're just going to enter this into the record as Exhibit 1.
there was a question by one of the commission members about how many types of liquor licenses there were. On the state of Connecticut website under liquor control, which is a division of the consumer protection, there were 29 different types of liquor licenses. Some of them are a little bit obscure, like marina liquor, catering, wholesale, things like that. But the liquor licenses that are probably most prevalent in the town, at least the active ones, are a wholesale liquor, restaurant wine and beer, package store, club liquor, that is to the VFW post, wholesale sales, restaurant wine and beer. So that's really what you see in town here. While meeting with the planner, we took a global look at the GIS map as well as the zoning map, and we tried to come up with some ideas about how this regulation could still regulate and still control, but open up avenues for development and other possibilities within the town, which previously had been either too close to a church or in the wrong spot next to something of a similar type permit. So the first thing that we did was that we broke out, well, let me start with this. In this town, all of the liquor licenses were lumped together. No matter what type of liquor license it was, they all had to abide by the distance regulations and other regulations set forth in this ordinance. So the first thing that we did was pull out on-premises consumption, which is if you go to a restaurant and drink a beer, or if you go to the VFW and drink a beer. We pulled that out, and the planner is working on an adjustment to the table that is in the rear of the zoning ordinance to have some regulation under a special use permit, which seems to work well for the town. I don't speak to that, but that's within your hands. As to section 54.2, I had initially proposed something that the commission members didn't feel comfortable with because it was too, there was too much area open for interpretation, as well as the engineer. So the planner and I sat down and said, okay, let's pick something out that is the absolute simplest. So your original text is in black. The first generation of changes is in red, and the final changes are in blue. So what we've come up with is that we're going to measure, in essence, from front door to front door, or from front door to parcel edge, the end. It's a straight line. It's simple, it's impossible to fudge it. GIS will prove it, a surveyor will prove it. It's unquestionable, that's the answer. In section 54.3, there is a minor adjustment in the text that has no substantive change. As to 54.4, the original regulation required that there should be a 500-foot separation from a church, synagogue, college, school, or park, playground. When we looked at the way the town was set up and how the state highways cross through here, we thought it would be a good idea to say, let's talk about these things on the same side of a busy road. So if there was a church across the street from Route 22, which no one's going to be walking across there, travel up back and forth across that area is unlikely. That is not really the separation that was intended by this. The separation was to keep it away from the church, away from the playground. And those playgrounds and churches are on one side of the street. So let's leave the other side of the street outside of that regulation. And in doing so, the small commercial centers that you have in North Branford, and there's not very many, in addition, that are zoned for alcohol use, there's even less. This allows a little bit more economic development because you said, okay, the church over there, we're gonna leave that alone, but across the street, it's gonna be all right. There's nothing over there, but something could go over there. A restaurant could go there, 2 restaurants could go there. It depends on the market forces. If 3 restaurants wanted to go there, that's up to, you know, the businessmen or businesswomen and how they wanted to run their business. As to the separation of distance between the class of permits, I only made a correction to capitalization. There's no change there. As to 54.4, there are a number of commercial centers in town that are large commercial centers. They may be close to smaller commercial centers or to freestanding locations. 54.4.3 exempts those places, where they're 12,000 square feet or larger, from the regulations regarding the distance. In addition, there is a section here for the relocation of a permit. There was no provision in the ordinance if a restaurant wanted to move, if a liquor store wanted to move, if the VFW wanted to move. There was no way to make that permit go somewhere else within a reasonable distance without either being kicked out of the box entirely or starting from the beginning. So that is inserted as well.
How would if there was a highway going through that, how would that be affected?
Within the 1,500 foot?
Yeah.
The 1,500 foot
There's no
relocation.
minimum is what I'm saying, you just have,
I'm sorry, I didn't.
it may be within 1,500.
Within
So it could be
1,500
within
foot radius.
500, it could be 250.
Well, I suggested a 1,500 foot radius, but it could be any number that this commission feels comfortable with. But a 1,500 foot radius seem to work, but that's just a suggestion.
So if it was 1,600 feet, then they would have to comply with the previous regulations.
Yes. It still gives them, we very carefully thought about this and looked on the map to create a measure of control that was reasonable, that was necessary, but in addition, to not have unreasonable control, to allow a few other places in town to have things that they just possibly could not exist with the current regulation. You know, you can't have a restaurant that's serving beer and wine next to a restaurant that's serving beer and wine. You can't do it. You have to go in another part of town.
One thing I just want to add to what Felipe was saying is that we did look at sample ordinances from surrounding communities, and that's where we got the indication that it's best to, well, they are also separating consumption on from consumption off premises. And as Felipe mentioned, in our current zoning table, any restaurant requires a special use permit, which is why we thought it would be best to just add in alcohol under that review and approval, under the special use permit. So it's already being controlled and reviewed by P&Z under a special use permit. It just doesn't call out alcohol consumption on site.
I got one question. On the discontinuance on 54.3,
Yes.
is there people now that are not in compliance? And aren't we putting an awful burden on some of these that maybe have been in that location for 20 years and we're asking them to relocate because they're going to be out of conformance?
No, that's respectfully, that's not what discontinuance section stands for.
Okay.
That
explain
means
to me.
like this. If a restaurant, let's say a restaurant was serving wine and beer, they had a family emergency, they had to leave the country, they closed the restaurant, they were gonna return to the restaurant. If they returned within 6 months, they could open up again with no problem. If they return within 9 months, if they return within 12 months, if they return in 13 months, they've lost their spot. Maybe
Okay.
someone could come next to them.
I didn't quite, get the meaning of that.
Yeah, that was in your original,
I know it was,
ordinance,
yeah.
and I tried to rewrite that to be more readable and understandable. If that isn't, I'm gonna rewrite it again for you.
As long as, at least I understand it now.
Yeah.
Before, I thought it was talking about anybody who had a liquor license who all of a sudden was not in conformance. Maybe they haven't been for years, and all of a sudden, they're gonna be asked to relocate,
Yeah.
which wouldn't be fair.
That's not fair, and it's against the law. There is a pre-existing non-conformity statement in the
I have
statute
one
that say
other
you can't.
just question. On this, if you notice, we had, on 139, used to be a supermarket there. It's been empty for a long time. But
Is that behind
in that
Dairy
little
Queen?
section there,
Yes.
where McDonald's is,
Yes.
I think, or the Dairy Queen, it hasn't been there for a long time, and whether it will be again, who knows? But there's a new restaurant there.
Mhm.
Now, the restaurant, I assume, has a liquor license. If a grocery store would ever go back in there, would he be able to get a liquor license? Or to sell liquor?
That's the difference that we tried to break out in the first section. On-premises consumption in the restaurant, if they had a liquor license. I don't know if they.
Well, I don't know
but
if they
Let's
do. I'm
assume for the
assuming they
sake
have
of.
wine.
Okay, so they have liquor. The store, the IGA, that's off-premises consumption.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
And I believe that there's actually a package store in that, in
Yes.
Central Plaza.
I know there used to
as
be, I
well.
haven't noticed it, but
So that would
it's still there.
apply
Well,
as well.
Right now, you've got the Asian place there, they sell liquor.
Right,
Nada's does not sell liquor.
well,
So
I didn't know if
if
they
this
did
passed,
that.
would Nada's be able to sell liquor? Is that because they're so close to each other?
with a
From-
special use permit, they would be able to, yes. And that's what I was speaking to. You have to, at a certain point, you have to let market forces rule. You know, if that area could sustain 2 restaurants
Right.
that also serve liquor, congratulations to
I
the
think,
town.
I think Central Pizza has like beer, I think, right? Beer and wine.
I have a question for you,
Yeah.
just to continue on with Fran on the same, with the 54.3.
Yes,
Your example that you just gave, so let's take it that the owners decided that they wanted to sell,
yes.
but they don't have somebody, they don't sell within the year. if somebody moves in that necessary, in that area, that takes the value of that for sale, that out, correct?
Well, I don't know the actual intent of this ordinance because I didn't write it, but I'm taking my intention of it. Discontinuance means to stop. So we're not talking about a functioning.
No, but say they close the restaurant. They close the restaurant, they put it for sale. It's not functioning anymore. It goes to 13 months. So what happens is if we allow somebody to move in because that restaurant has been closed for 13 months and it's for sale, that takes the value away from, and somebody moves in, that takes the value away from that business.
Could be, but I would say this, and I'm not going to.
I'm just throwing a bunch of hypotheticals
I'm
out
just
there,
gonna say
so.
this, in my opinion, and only my opinion, a discontinuance has to be a purposeful discontinuance. Abandonment, in other words. I think if that you have in your head that you're gonna try and market it, you're marketing it, it's actively marketed, you have an agent, it's not that's, in my personal opinion, that's not discontinuance.
So the other thing is that this rewrite, again, only applies to consumption offsite. So it wouldn't actually apply to a restaurant, the discontinuance.
So.
It would just be for
But still,
a package store.
A package store,
wine.
yes, a wine store, but that, it would, in my opinion, it would have to be active. That's ultimately a matter for the planner or the town attorney.
How did we come up with 1,200 or 12,000 square feet?
Well, I hate to say this, but I drove around town on my free time, looking at the sizes of places.
Yeah.
And it seemed that the way the town was built up, that 12,000 was the size of places that could handle those things.
Mhm.
That was something that I did from my own observation, using, a tape measure and the assessor's cards when I went back to see what the footprints of the buildings were. I've suggested it. You could make it 8,000, you could make it 20,000. I just went, I picked some spots and went to the assessor's cards and said, okay, well, 12,000 seems to be the magic number.
And that's the total, so the gross square footage?
I would call that the pad. Yeah,
Pad.
the
So
footprint.
if there's a shopping plaza with multiple storefronts, are you
Well,
adding up the gross square
that would have to be
footage of
considered.
the pad? Or
This-
are you only talking about like a big Y?
I would say, I was considering this to be on the pad, but now that you've said that, doesn't make,
What do you mean by the pad? The actual store?
the footprint, the footprint of the entire structure. There might be 10 or 12 stores in there, but the footprint of the entire structure.
Including
Yeah,
parking.
that's the way I read it, is that you're looking at the whole strip itself.
Yes, the whole
Has to
strip.
be 1,200 feet, not
Yes.
just one store.
That's correct.
That's how I
So-
interpreted it.
So it was this strip, and if this commission feels that that's too large or too small, we can adjust it, but that's where I came to from my independent observation.
If that's the average, then
It seems to be from the assessor, I didn't have a surveyor. I used the assessor card and I made notes and I went back and looked at the assessor's cards.
So you're saying if you had a strip mall that was 1,200 square feet and it had 6 stores in it, you could put a package store in either end,
Well, no, you couldn't. I think
it's
that.
more than 500 feet apart.
Well, but you have to be separated from 1,500 feet. That was your previous regulation, and that's unchanged.
Okay, 15, all right.
Okay, I'm looking at 5441.
5441, yes.
The busy state highway.
Yes.
And just one scenario, pops into my head. The center of Northford.
Yes.
Route 17, Middletown Avenue.
Yep.
A very busy state highway.
Yes,
So conceivably, you have St. Andrew's Episcopal Church.
you do.
And right across the street, you can put a discount liquor store with the flashing lights because it's a busy state highway.
If it was separated sufficiently from other uses, that actually is true, yes. However,
Carrying that scenario a little farther down
Yeah.
the street, you can put the second discount liquor store across from the entrance to Totoket Valley.
If the
The school.
separation distances were right, but there's something very important to consider here. The town is over permitted already. There's one permit too many for the permits are generated by census data. The Liquor Control Commission reviews that census data and adjusts it. So for the number of people that live in this town, there's already one permit too many. I don't know what the ratio would be, how many people would have to move into the town, so I'll call it legalize that permit. I believe it's a good number of people. You'd have to have another good number of people to allow an additional permit.
Yes, but on the closed. Yeah, so someone with a small package store can close their package store or
And
move
relocate.
it in front-
Theoretically, that's
right in front of the church or right in front of the school,
True.
because busy state highways are North Branford.
True.
I mean, we've got them zigzagging everywhere, and they're all busy with no crosswalks. Pet peeve of mine. But,
Yes, that's.
yeah, I'm not sure I like that, a busy state highway trumps the 500-foot rule. But we can discuss that.
Yeah.
Right, so this is just the initial discussion, there still has to be a public hearing.
You know, this is, I brought this to you to get closer to what you would feel comfortable with.
Mhm.
So I've met with the planner, I could meet with her again, and we can discuss some things with your input.
Right now, there's the Congregational Church down the street.
Yes.
So if this passed, and then that Gulf station turned into a liquor store, that'd be, right now, the Gulf station cannot be a liquor store or a restaurant because it's proximity to the church, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with this passed, it could because of the state highway, even though there's a walkway there.
If the distance is right, I guess theoretically it could be.
Theoretically, the Petco could be one too.
You know. But
The mobile
again,
station.
you could
Yeah,
relocate
that's
these
not their
permits,
church
but
or anything.
I don't think you could get it, I mean, it would be a very, very long time in this town before another permit became
Oh, the one
available.
by Jerome Harrison?
That's what I was, I'm sorry, that's what, I mean, I was just making the same point, is that that would be the same case. That's actually just a little diagonal from that church.
When Felipe and I were looking at the town map, we noticed that there, of course, are a lot of churches and schools in North Branford's town center. So Northford, there are 2, and of course, you know, down here in North Branford. So, as he mentioned, the zoning only allows restaurants in B1, B2, and some indoor restaurants in the industrial zone. But in order to keep development in those areas, that's why we were trying to adjust the distance by either using the state highway as an allowance, you know, as a boundary, trying to adjust it slightly so that there wouldn't be potential sprawl or creep of businesses outside of the town centers. So those are just kind of some of the considerations that we looked at. And we also wanted to try and spur economic development, which I feel like we've done in itself by just separating out the consumption on and off site premises.
If all the permits are for over a limit, you couldn't build any new establishments anyway, right? Only move.
Right,
As
they
far
could
as
be
an
moved.
off-premises consumption,
Okay.
that's right. There are no permits available, you have one permit too many.
Okay.
Let me ask you a question. If one of the current permittees moves his store, does that cancel out his permit? Does he have to do anything about refiling, or can he move within the town without?
Currently?
Under this, the regulation. Well, not under this any regular, but what is the process? If one of the liquor stores moves from North Branford to Northford, is he still allowed to do that, or does he lose it? Does he lose it because we have one too many?
I think he's
Well,
asking for liquor control.
Oh, from a
Yeah,
liquor
yeah.
control
Oh, yeah, not from
standpoint.
ours, yes, I'm saying, yeah.
From a liquor control standpoint, he or she has a property interest in that. That belongs to the person who holds the permit. And if it could be relocated, then it can be relocated. But that permit belongs to the person, not the place.
I just said.
Sorry. Yeah, no, go ahead.
This idea of using the state highway, was that in any of the other town
No.
regulations? That's something unique to us, okay, just curious.
The town was so narrow that when we pulled out the map, and actually, she said something accidentally, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could just use this line? Well, that was a great idea. I said, that is the answer to this. You know, the physical separation of that road is a bigger separation. You could understand how on the same side of the road, you'd want to keep that away. But boy, that's a pretty large separation. You know, when you're we rarely today stand at the side of the road anymore, right? But I think if you went to the side of the road at Route 22 or where Middletown is, and you stood there, you'd realize what a looming separation that is, even though it's only 2 lanes. I'm going to, if you'd like to give more comments to the planner, I imagine I'm going to work again with her to revise this a little bit more, and we'll officially propose it for you.
Perfect.
Okay?
Thank you for joining. Okay, the next order of business, discussion on proposed amendment of zoning regulations regarding self-storage.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Bob Costello, and I'm here tonight because, you know, I've done several self-storage facilities in town. The ones on Cyril Road, I believe, is the last ones that I've done. And it's always an awkward procedure because your regulations are silent on self-storage. And the way that I've been guided by staff was really when you go to schedule your permitted uses in Schedule A, I've always been guided to Section 13. And line C13 talks about warehousing and wholesale business and commercial storage to the extent permitted in a district. And the thought process was because self-storage is the only line item that I could fit into, it really caused us to go through and get a variance first, because that line item says that you have to be greater than 500 feet to a residential district. Now, that regulation was put into place in the early 90s because of warehousing where you have tractor-trailer traffic and other things occurring where they start very early in the morning and they tend to come back very late in the evening, and you get a lot of noise and you get all the things that go along with the true warehousing type of project. So my proposal to the commission is a set of regulations for your review. And I am proposing to have you look at these, consider them, and maybe add some feedback to me if you're inclined to go along with my line of thinking. But I would add 2 new lines, 13.2 and 13.3. And they both would be in the I2 or I3 zones. And I'd like to share this with you. I don't know if Gary...
They may already have a copy, but
Okay.
we can take one and submit it as an exhibit.
Mine are...
Please,
I submitted a draft that I had written that's dated 10/6/14.
Yeah.
And I know that your town planner had some comments on it. But anyway, my proposal talks about what they really are. And they are the type of building that you would have, their type or group of buildings that would have room, spaces, container, or other units that are individually leased or rented. They are not sold, but they're for personal goods and other properties. And I think I did a reasonable job in identifying what they're all about. I put in there size requirements from 25 square feet to no more than 500 square feet. And I've also indicated that they be in the I-2 or an I-3 zone. And then I talk about what's in your regulations as Article 4, design use requirements in Section 41, which is detailed standards which for any commercial site plan, when I come before you, I make sure that I have every line item in that standard, which is well written and would be tacked on to this proposed use. So it would be layout plans, grading plans, drainage plans, lighting, erosion control, landscaping, all that other good stuff. Underneath my general requirements number 2, I put a very bold note and a paragraph about no outside storage. In particular, on some other ones, when I've gone around and looked at other towns, sometimes I see boats, RVs, and other things outside, and I wouldn't want to see North Branford own a facility that would allow that type of use. I envision these are nice, clean buildings that will be a nice site. They are low impact. There's not a lot of traffic here. It's really a clean use for an industrial zone. I put in here under item number 3 that no electrical outlets will be allowed in the individual units. And where I'm going at with that one is I don't want to have someone rent the unit and find that he's running a saw or doing other things that would be not in keeping with the character of where I think this whole site plan should be. Item number 4, I talk about buffers. I state that really the sides and the rear shall be screened by a landscaping buffer that would be designed by a licensed landscape architect. And that's, in my opinion, not in your regulations at all. So this would be someone who is licensed to, develop a plan for screening and for landscaping to make these facilities look pleasing to the eye when you drive by. I also talk in this area, sometimes you get a site that has natural buffers, it has natural wooded areas, it has natural topography, it has a beautiful wetland corridor that you'd want to stay away from. And I think all those things can be used in the design of a site plan for this type of use. Item number 4C, I talk about minimum setbacks from buildings to property lines of at least 100 feet when it's close to a residential zone or adjacent to a residential zone. And then for paving and parking, I put in a minimum setback of 50 feet, and I call out for that 50 feet to be suitably landscaped and or fenced, and that would go back to item 4B, which talks about, or 4A, the licensed landscape architect. So you'd have a nice buffer established between the two uses, which is compatible and maybe a little stronger than what you have right now in your I-2 and your I-3 zones.
Oh, can I ask you a question on that?
Yep.
Because I had it from the earlier thing you said. So you said the existing regulation had 500 feet based on the use included, like tractor trailers, so they wanted separation
Right.
from that. Was that an assumption or?
No.
No.
As you know, some of you know, I've been appearing before your board for over 30 years now. And I remember in the early 90s sitting at a planning and zoning meeting in the old town hall when there was a concern over development off of Branford Road, I think it was. Correct, where that is an I zone and adjacent to one side of it is a residential zone. And the developer came in and it was a warehouse, 20,000 square foot warehouse with a tractor trailer type of use. And they moved, it got approved, it was a matter of right, and the developer moved in and there was some noise issues. So as a reaction to that development, the 500 feet came into play where it wasn't before. And that's my trouble with all this. I'm really not that type of use. When you go by any self-storage use, and I've done ones of as large as 40,000 square feet in one building, multiple floors. When you go back there, you see, even on a Saturday, you maybe see 5 cars. You don't see a lot at all. You don't see a large amount of activity. At the best, you may see a pickup truck or a U-Haul truck. There's nothing with tractor trailers and the noises. Anyway, I go on and I talk about the neutral tones of the buildings. I talk about hours of operation, which is consistent with your regulations. I talk about permitted activities and what they're not allowed for in item number 7. And I talk about site lighting. And I've added something that is not in your regulations, which is, I don't believe it's in your regulations, an isolux plan and a requirement for full cutoff fixtures. And an isolux plan is a site lighting plan that actually an engineer would develop, which shows how bright the light would be, how far it would travel, and there are standards for designing this so you don't have hot spots and you don't have very, very dark spots, or an area where you look at it and all you're seeing is the glow of the light. And that's about it. So I was hopeful that I could leave this thought with you, hopefully get some input back from you, whether you thought that this was a good idea. Your regulations, again, are silent on it, and I think that these are a nice, clean use that will allow, it should be allowed in the I2 zone without going for a variance or other special uses.
And one comment on the hours of operation. I know that a lot of these units are like people that are storing house goods and stuff like that, but a lot of them aren't. And say there's a house builder, a carpenter, a plumber. He's got extra materials from a job and he's storing them there, extra lumber and stuff. To have the opening at 7 a.m., I mean, a lot of them go to work at 7 a.m., especially in the summertime. Would it be feasible to make that a little earlier, even 6:30?
Yes, I mean, this is a document that I had written and wanted your input if you thought it was a good idea. And yes, a little bit earlier would be fine. My experience is it's a nice, quiet use. A gentleman would pull up, or a family in their car and unload, or it could be a guy remodeling a kitchen that needs to have some extra space. But these are small units, they're not huge, they're not very big at all. I do think adding some flexibility there would help to make a project more successful, if I may say it, and that's very important.
That's the only thing I say is that it would just leave many of your small business people work on their trucks. They don't have big companies that they store things in. They could have leftover pipes, they could have leftover wood. They don't want to toss it, so they want to store it for another time. But because they go to work early in the morning, it seems they could have access a little early.
Right. And I agree 100%. I think most of these units would be, on all the ones that I've done, are not done by someone that has a little business. It's more done for a family that has a need for additional storage. And rather than having that be in the garage or in the attic that may be full, or in the backyard with another shed, you have a dedicated place that's very, very affordable. And what I've tried to do is make it not only, something that is good for the community, but is a nice looking facility.
One question, just kind of tailing on what Fran was talking about, but if, on number 7B, industrial activity, I just want, can you clarify what you mean next? I just want to make sure, if there is somebody who's storing something in there, if there maybe a contracted, that could be taken as in industrial activity. So I want to just, if you can clarify that, please.
And that goes back to where I was gearing in here. My intention was not to have a gentleman that was in business, or let's say was running, like a little machine shop or something like that. Those would all be permitted, not permitted uses here. So I've tried to say no manufacturing, no fabrication, no processing, no service of vehicles, no storage of engines, appliances, and no other activities. And I couldn't, maybe I couldn't find the right word, industrial, commercial, that sort of thing. That's not what these are all about.
And I just wanted to clarify.
Yep. I think that type of use belongs in the I-2 zone as part of, you know, another branch that's in your schedule standards where you could allow that. Maybe in the North Branford Industrial Park and Commerce Street, that type of use I believe belongs there.
Question number 17, the storage of flammable hazardous materials. So you said that you didn't want boats or trailers or RVs outside. Would this limit,
Yeah,
prohibit
no,
storage of cars,
I think it's unsafe for a gentleman to have a
boats?
can of gas or a little something that
What
has
about motor
flammable
vehicles?
and put them in one of these buildings. They're not really designed for that.
So it would not be like, you could not store motor vehicles, boats?
That is
cars?
correct. That's not the intention, not at all.
Right.
When you say-
I would say that if there was a need for car storage, depending on the design, as part of the site development plan that came before you, because you have a lot of people that have a specialty car, and if the space is 500 square feet and it's properly designed, meaning maybe 1 hour rated or 2 fire rated walls, that's permissible. What I didn't want to have happen is you had a lot of flammable materials that potentially could cause a fire issue and drive the fire marshal crazy. That's not what I wanted.
When you say small units, how small is small?
Um,
How big is your smallest?
Okay, so I have tried to be flexible. I have between 25 square feet and 500 square feet written in the regulations. Typically, I don't see them as small as 25 square feet, but I tried to make it flexible. I thought about it. It didn't seem to be a bad number. It really isn't. It's like a 5 by 5.
Yeah.
You don't normally see that. You see 5 by 10s, and you see them up to 500 square feet, which is, you know, kind of a 10 by 50 or a little bit larger, which would allow for a small car. 50 is really not a good number for these buildings. Usually they are 30 feet wide, is what I typically see, so.
Just one thing to point out, on the chart on the first page, Bob talked about the outside storage. You'll notice the difference between 13.2 and 13.3 is the special use permit that's required for outside storage.
Good point. I forgot to mention that. Thank you. I was trying to make it so that if you had a special site that came before you, that you had the flexibility to look at that. If the siting of it made sense, and from a topography standpoint and other standpoints for buffers, that might be a use that you may want to consider. Because it really is also when you go in neighborhoods and you have boats all over the place and trailers and camp trailers, it would be nice to have a facility in town that would allow that to happen so that the residential neighborhood was more cleaner, if I may say it that way.
Does anybody have anything else?
You want to change anything, you consider putting space on
We still have to receive an actual application.
Correct.
From
Tonight, I was hopeful for initial feedback, whether this is something worth pursuing. There again, like I said, it's always been frustrating when this is, and I think I own 2 of them in town, when they come up, that there's no line item or no regulation to go to. At least this would be a document that would give you, I think, if you would allow it for any one site, a better development plan.
The only comment I have is kind of contrary to you. I kind of like the 7 AM because it's kind of consistent with some of the hours of operation we've approved for, I think, for similar industrial activities, and it's it's consistent with the noise ordinance, I think that's at 7 AM, so I prefer not to go early, personally. I think 7 AM is reasonable.
Anybody else? Any other
Yeah, I
comments?
don't have any trouble with seven.
All right, so,
So, and that is
Right, if you'd like to submit an application, and then we can set a public hearing.
okay. Thank you for your input and time.
You're welcome.
Next business is discussion with Aero Paving regarding 90 Zero Road and a proposal to stockpile material, develop a 50 by 30 building, and leave equipment and trucks on site.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, my name is John Paul Garcia. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor. I'm here representing Aero Paving. With me to my left here is Kevin McCullen, who's the owner of Aero Paving. What they're interested in purchasing is a parcel of property at the end of Ciro Road, which is known as 90. Here's a copy of the town assessor's map, just to give you an idea of where it is. And what Mr. McClellan is trying to do is relocate a paving business. I'm sorry. That's my next trick.
You already got 2 strikes against you. I don't know.
What's that?
You got 2 strikes against you.
Believe me. Anyway, what Kevin would like to do is relocate his business from Guilford to here. The issue that we have is your regulations are a little unclear, and in Kevin talking with the town planner, I guess, there had been some question about whether or not he can run the operation he wants to run in this location. And it was the town planner's suggestion that we come and talk before this commission. His operation is he wants to put up a small building, approximately 30 by 50, for the storage of small equipment, tampers, vibrators, that kind of thing, and for a repair bay for his trucks. And he would have outside storage of his trucks, paving machine, and also he needs an area where he needs a stockpile area where he can store processed aggregate, crushed stone, and material that's removed from a job and then it's going to be brought back to another job. As in when you do a driveway, you rip up the pavement and the sub-base courses, you need someplace to store that material temporarily until you have another use for it. The regulations are somewhat mute on that particular operation. This is an I-2 zone. The operation itself is allowed as a standard use. It's it's a construction business. It's an office. He'll have an office in there. It's the question of whether or not he can store the material, and he needs the ability to store material on site, because a lot of times he'll work on Saturdays and Sundays when places are closed. So he needs to have access to 200 or 300 yards of material. We're not talking about storing 10,000 yards of material. We're talking about storing 500 to 1,000 yards of material, maybe. But the bottom line is he needs to have storage of as I said, stone, base aggregate, the sub-base material, and clean fill that he uses on his paving jobs. And that's basically it. We just need some clarification on, on the
Outside storage of
on the outside storage of materials. I think does that.
Yep, absolutely. And just to state a little bit further, in the zoning regulations under C-15, it seemed like this use fit under the lumber and building material yards or contractors' yards, which are permitted. And as you'll see on the assessor's map that they just handed out, the area of the site that they're proposing to use is actually to the south, so it's kind of the pointy part of the parcel. which is,
Cyril Road runs north-south.
yes. And there are two residences, so it becomes residential directly adjacent to this parcel. The homes are on Glenwood Road. The use, though, the building that Kevin is proposing, as well as the storage, would be, it appears, the farthest from these homes as possible on this site. So again, the question that I was kind of wrestling with, that I just wanted some input on, is the exterior storage of crushed aggregate, as long as he does not exceed, you know, the 25% of the lot area, as I'm reading the regs. It seemed like it would be okay, and, you know, we had talked about the manner in which it would be stored is using the masonry blocks.
Yes,
in the
I do that
bays.
now.
So you put block down first and everything on top of that?
Pavement, block, yes, it's all
But
contained.
create storage bins. You know,
Yeah.
I'm sure anybody's been to a contractor supply yard. You know, I don't think mafia block is an acceptable term anymore. Precast concrete blocks to create bins. And even some of the guys, depending on material, like wood chips and stuff, a lot of guys are starting to actually put little covers on them just to keep the material from freezing, you know, getting wet and stuff. But that's the idea, is to make a couple of series of bins. And we're not talking about processing equipment. We're not talking about processing materials on site. We're talking about already processed materials.
Right, and that was one clarification that we made over the phone, just not processing on site.
How big are the bins?
We haven't determined that yet. Right now, I think I'm operating out of a 75 by 75, two of them, about that size.
And how many would you need on this side?
About the same, 75 by 75, two bins about that size.
Carrie, in your planner's report, it says, 25% of lot area, storage must be enclosed. What's the
Right.
interpretation? Is it just on sides?
That was, right, so let's see.
That's something I didn't understand either.
All outside storage areas shall be enclosed, except for access drives by buildings and or fences, walls, embankments, or evergreen shrubs.
I mean, the
Well,
building,
The-
That's what I'm wondering what that means.
Fence, well, that's surrounded by fences and such. It would probably mean that you put up a privacy fence, like a 6-foot high
Right, it goes on.
privacy fence.
It seems
So
to say,
it's more
you
to
know,
that.
the intent is to screen the storage area
Okay,
from
yep.
view from any other lot and from the street.
That's the way I read that.
You can't, you wouldn't see it anyway.
I understand that, but that's,
I
when I
understand.
read that one, it says, if you put up a privacy fence, that's what
Okay.
your intent is.
And so this would not be for retail sales, correct?
Just for solely myself.
Okay.
Like I said, one of the big things, one of the problems he has is if he works Saturdays and Sundays, which he does, you can't get material on Saturdays and Sundays. Or if he leaves at 6 o'clock in the morning, none of these places are open at 6 o'clock, you want to send a truck out loaded.
How much trucks and equipment that you have that you would have on the premises stored outside?
Right now, I don't plan on getting any bigger, and I'm not going to. I own three dump trucks, 3 box trucks, 14-foot box trucks, a couple of excavators, 2 payloaders, pay machine rollers, a couple of graders, and that's all I have.
And where would you store them on this property?
Just next to the buildings, wherever we, outside, of course. I don't want to put up a building to, warehouse all these. It would take up too much of the property. Outside somewhere.
So that would have to come back with a site plan, but
Yeah.
the intent is whether or not, what we're trying to get is a feel from the commissioners, whether or not this is even an acceptable allowed use.
Right, specifically the storage.
Specifically the
outside
storage. Everything else we can make fit.
And, the storage of outside equipment, I guess, too. But I see all the Sierra Road looks like that, so.
yeah. The 25% lot stored, is that on usable lot or the entire lot?
Total.
Well, that's coverage, the 25% lot coverage.
Well, because more than half the lot is wetlands, so it's not usable.
Well, no, quite the contrary, that's a little bit,
Take a look.
that's a little bit deceiving. Just, this is the map that was prepared by Criscolo when they did it. There's only a swath of wetlands.
Okay, that would-
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, the town map actually shows something that's different. Of according to what Mr. Criscola.
There's a lot less wetlands on the map.
There's a strip that's right through here, which actually,
Wetlands.
yeah, that's right here. This is actually, everything over here is usable.
The dotted line is the wetlands,
It's
maybe.
just something like that.
So the regulations, it looks like it's 25% of the lot area, so.
The entire.
And there's no
entire
exclusion
lot.
for,
No exclusion.
So, I thought we discussed something similar. I thought there was also mention of a contractor that has secondary storage.
I think Cherry Hill does.
That's
In our
where it came up,
regulations.
under Cherry Hill.
Because I don't know if does this, I mean, I guess it's up to interpretation, is this more suggestive of, like, that's your primary business, lumber and building materials?
What at Cherry Hill is secondary? What was it considered? You said Cherry Hill, that they have, there's secondary usage?
Or they have stockpile of stone or dirt or something, I believe.
Well, they also had their special use permit because they were like recycling.
Right.
I mean, there was
There was
some other,
stuff.
yeah, I mean, they have basically a processing facility and they did some recycling on site of aggregate materials and the like. But they also took in lumber, they have that whole facility that.
yeah, no.
I thought we had in our regulations, we have something that talks directly to
Let's
someone
see, there were,
like this.
What about Triano? He's right up the street, right? What's that? Triano excavation, he's up the street, yeah.
they were on, see, they came under, I think, intermediate processing facilities, which was a special use, under line C20. Outside, and then they reference outside storage or stockpiling of refuse, garbage, and recyclable materials are prohibited unless stored within an enclosure, trailer, or container. They talk about green belt, the buffering. Again, that's a special use permit.
Always look into that more.
Harry, are you looking at 2325?
Close. Next page.
There wouldn't be any storage of petroleum, like
No 404 haulers on site, I don't own any,
the
no,
things that, I'm
nothing,
thinking the things they oil the roads with.
nothing, no fuel, nothing like that. No septic trucks, nothing.
Yeah, but you do the roads, you have to oil and gravel.
I don't do any groundwork, remediation, nothing. Strictly rip out driveways is, 80%, and, resurface roads.
It's 41.2.10. Talks about site plan requirements for outside storage. And the limitations that Kerry talked about. But obviously, the big concern is abutting a residence zone and trying to keep the buffer in place. That's where the issues always potentially could arise, and that's why the restrictions are here.
In this particular, I think that's not an issue because the lot's configuration from the adjacent road don't allow for a house to be right behind there.
Yeah, it's a rock wall.
On this plan, the dashed line, is that, wondering if that's 50 feet? This line,
Yeah.
does that show,
This is 100, we kept it 100 from the wetlands.
and then 50 from, I'm
Yes.
just wondering about this
Yeah,
residence here.
50 from the back.
Okay.
And where's the building gonna go?
Probably right here.
Okay.
JP, do you want to show them on the map, though?
Yeah,
I mean,
this is it.
that's better.
This is a little better, but the building would probably go something like right here. This shows the actual 50 feet, 100 feet from the wetlands.
Yep.
So the building would probably go something like this, and the storage would be over here, and some storage behind the building. And then, fence along the side.
What size building? Is this like an office?
Small,
Yeah, he's-
one garage,
Office with a
50 by
garage.
30 at the most, yeah. Bring in one piece of equipment, work on it, out it comes. We are seasonal, so we're not gonna, we're there 9 months out of the year and pretty much shut down for the other 3, 4.
Most of the regulations are relatively upfront and concise. Like I said, the problem that we have with your regulations is the outside storage of materials. That's the big issue, and that's what the town planner had thought would be the best thing to do, is talk to you guys.
So the storage would go on the usable area?
Pardon?
The storage bins would be on the usable area?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Can't store next to the wetland.
And that would be shown on the site plan as well?
Yeah, you have to. I would assume that that's, normally when we do that kind of a site plan, we normally show outside storage, screening areas, where trucks are parked, that kind of thing.
Anybody else, any thoughts or whatever?
What's the use or the zoning south, that little triangular usable, what's to the right of that?
You over here, Charlie?
Yeah, sir, what's the use there? You drive down Cyril Road, it looks like the woods.
You're talking about down here on the right, Zero, or
Behind the
this
wall.
here?
So I believe
Well, no,
it's
this is the-
it's
this-
R80,
Yeah, what's
Yeah, that's
back
over
in
here.
here?
so it's
Yeah, you
R80.
got Glenwood.
Yeah, this is Glenwood
What's
right
down
here.
at this end?
If you go south of there, it was the old, I mean, that was the old dump road, and there's, you can just go in a little bit, there's the old landfill.
Was that a house that's on there? Is that the lot for the house?
Houses are on the east, not Glenwood Road.
Branford Trust, Conservation Trust owns a parcel in here that they have.
This is one on the west side.
Pardon?
And then they're
Yeah, I'm
looking
trying to,
to
what
expand
you talking about?
probably right away.
Read down in here,
Oh,
right here.
this is town, right? These are the houses, well, this is the houses off Glenwood Road. This is town, this is the landfill.
Okay.
The old landfill right down there.
That's not property
Trust
down
owns
here.
a parcel somewhere
Right,
as well.
right. And the old car.
Right, that's just for them.
Can I see the
I'm sorry. We're talking about down here.
Yeah, I was thinking summer morning with the dump truck backing up.
The entire area, this entire area is already commercial, you know, that's what they use it. It's not an unanticipated use, I think.
Right, I just looking at Glenwood.
I can hear trucks over on Squire Road and get for a walk at 60 over there.
I'm a mile from my own town garage and you can hear them. On a nice night, nice still night, you can hear them backing up.
Yeah, I can hear railroad trains.
Yeah, nothing you do about it.
Anything else we want to provide? Any info we want to provide? Everybody good?
Well, I'm thinking of keeping some of the activity away from Glenwood, would it be good practice to take that triangular piece of usable area and use that for your storage?
Well, to the right, that's correct, yes. We would put the building closest to Glenwood, and then we would put to the right, or to the north, would be the outside storage area. This here. you're
Because
talking
of the
right
wetlands, we won't be
here.
near
It's away
there.
from the wetlands. We're talking
You're
about,
up in here?
no, this area here is the wetland. We're talking about using this area right here.
Oh, okay.
And where would the storage be?
Over in this area here.
Oh, to the south.
Is that south of, I haven't had my.
You don't have an arrow.
I don't have, I think this is a.
The tip is the south.
The tip, okay, the tip is the south.
Yeah.
The downside. And because the building would go here, and we would use this area here, or maybe some area back here for like bin storage over here, and then equipment storage over here. But this area is the wetland, so you could, the wetland actually comes like this, so you couldn't use this area within 100 feet.
Is this right next to the storage area now that's over there, the storage area?
There's a,
This is farther down?
yeah, I think.
Yeah, pretty much, it's on the other side of the road.
Across the street. Going up Zero, it's on the left.
My only thing is, just maybe,
Yeah.
I mean, one thing is, on the site plan, is adequate buffering from people from Glenwood. I
Yeah.
don't know what's over there. but-
And there is one house, and that is towards the wetland side, and we planned on putting our building there that would screen, I guess, sound and sight of us. and then work towards the south end, like we said. It's pretty hard, it's difficult because it's kind of a 50-foot rock wall anyway, so even at the dead of winter, you really can't see, you know, much
So
going
the
in there.
elevation from where,
Goes straight up,
so the people on the Glenwood are 50 feet up in the air?
over the hill, or
Okay.
over a mountain almost, yeah.
I haven't been up there.
Yeah, it's a hike.
So,
160 to 130, yeah.
It's
see,
a hike.
We're 130, and the flat part of closest would be 160 to 180.
So you get 20, 25
So you're up there.
foot wall of rock.
You're up there pretty good.
anything else? Thank you for joining us tonight.
Well, thanks. So the bottom line is you're gonna just want to see a regular site plan, but on the site plan, you're gonna want to see your storage areas and how we plan on, you know, laying equipment on it. But it doesn't appear to be
I mean, but-
anything of any great shakes.
Right.
It's an
I
allowed
would like
use, okay.
Site plan with some very, enough detail in it.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you very, very much.
Thank
Have a
you.
pleasant evening.
Is there a public hearing for this issue or no?
No. It's a site
So it's a
plan.
done deal, basically?
No. It's not a done deal.
All right.
Excuse me? Yeah, there's, site plan. Yeah. Next order of business is discussion on proposed regulation regarding special use permit for single-family open space cluster development.
So I don't believe the proponent for this is here. He asked that we just bring this to the commission. So you may remember back in September, I believe, we were given a draft copy of some proposed zoning changes to the single-family open space cluster development. So I believe each of you received copies of this, hopefully? No? In your packet?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Charlie has it. If you need,
You got another copy?
yes. Okay.
Or I'll just give the next one. No,
You can use this one.
so that's just one.
Sorry, I thought they were in your packet.
Most likely, I didn't get this one here.
So the main difference between this change and existing special use permits for developments is that this is a cluster development. It would allow for cluster housing and would require preservation of open space, but it would allow for the open space to be either contiguous or have a boundary line not exceeding 1,000 linear feet to the development parcel. So the parcel that they were looking at is off of Clintonville Road. So it's at 32 to 50 Clintonville Road. It's near the Firelight Alarms, the Honeywell property, near the Northford Ice Pavilion. And the proposal that these regulations would potentially affect is this cluster development right here. So the draft regulations propose a minimum of 15 acres, a maximum of 25, and essentially it would allow up to 5 units per acre. So it's dense development. But again, it would require the preservation of open space. And the open space that they're proposing as part of this specific proposal is actually to the north. So it's behind the Firelight Alarms property, behind Honeywell, and abuts Wallingford. So really the applicant is just looking for comments and feedback from the commission on this cluster development. I think, you know, we briefly talked about it when he presented a few months ago.
So I took a drive up there. When they say behind Honeywell, they're not joking.
Yes.
It's up against the building. It's right up against the back of the building, before the first lane of parking cars. So you drive behind Honeywell, very tight to the building, hook a right, and there's a bridge.
Yeah, yeah.
Without any safety whatsoever. So if the town ever took that property, they'd have to put a regulation bridge in, because that would be town property and have to have access to it. Now, also back there, I was surprised, there's this fantastic remote plane field.
Yeah, it's a monitor thing.
Yeah, I mean, they have tents and trailers and everything's manicured. It's a real nice operation. The only problem is getting there over that bridge without railings and without.
Yeah, I mean, isn't there, I'm sure, Kurt, is there regulations, like DOT regulations about the bridge, to, you know, if there's gonna be something there?
A private bridge.
Right.
That's been there for, quite a while. I mean, it's not really regulated by anybody.
But if it were
in terms of use.
become the town
If it was a
bridge.
municipal one, yeah, all of a sudden then where everything that goes along with municipal liability, every standard has to be met to, and that bridge.
But even if it wasn't town, and they go to, develop that area.
Oh, the development, I mean, if they do it, they're gonna have to develop, if they were to develop the back piece where the model airplane flies, they've gotta bring something up to
That's the
current
open
standards.
space.
That's the open space, yeah, right now, I mean, that's what they're talking about
I
doing.
think that was our concern. Another concern, I'm not a concern, but that piece of property borders North Haven and Wallingford, has limited use
It's
even
attached to
for
it.
the residents of Northford. It's westernmost point of.
So I did
That
meet
area
with
is-
David Sargent of the North Branford Land Trust and just spoke with him about the potential, if there was any interest from the land trust in this parcel, and he was going to bring it to the board. And also talk with some counterparts in North Haven and Wallingford. I don't know what exists in those other communities, if they have town land that could then be used, joined together with their land trusts. So he was going to look into that.
But I think, the bigger issues are, one, I mean, this is a unique proposal, because normally any open space piece is contiguous with a piece getting developed. So that's one item to focus on, if the commission has any interest or what their thoughts are on that. And the other thing is, the proposed density of the piece out front. I mean, it is they're trying to create a transition piece between residential along Clintonville Road and industrial where Firelight is. But at what density? They're, basically, the part that they're looking to develop, they end up, I think it's fair to say, with like 5 units per acre in that developed portion of it.
Yeah, so because
And that's higher than-
it's a 6-acre piece, right?
Right.
The original time they came in, it was 6 acres. But
Yeah, it is.
Did he
It's
just
a
say that
6
it's
acre.
minimum of 25?
I believe, so minimum of 15 acres, I believe that would have to include the open space
Oh, that's
It's not
component.
continuous.
Right.
And so they have, in the regulations, it would be 35% of the gross land area. So a minimum of 5.25 acres for open space or up to 8.75. So it's a percentage, they set it at 35% of the gross.
Yeah, so I can see where that is a big concern, like you said, contiguous space, because that's opening up. So you have a piece here and a piece here, well, I'm meeting my 15 acres, but I really only have 5, and I have 10 over here.
It's interesting,
That's kind of,
concerns me, is the spacing between the houses.
Mhm.
Because they have 10-foot side yards between the houses. 10 foot and 20 feet between, behind the house. Is that regulations?
Right, and I think,
Oh.
sorry.
Well, I just tried to get a feel for how the center of that would look. And, we deal with 40,000 square foot lots. Well, if you put those, and this is, I recognize it's condos, so but I estimated what it would be with minimum side yards. And the lots come out to be 3,000 square foot. And there's 1,600 on the house, So that's about 49% coverage around those houses. I mean, it's really, really damn dense, right?
Mhm. I think there was also some confusion last time about the measurement, because there was a certain distance between units, but then a different distance between the unit and the
side.
setback.
Yeah, I think
Right.
it was the side one, and I decided that was a house on the corner, and to keep the distance from the streets
Right.
is the same.
So that just seemed
And another
confusing.
thing I did not see in the write-up was a requirement for sidewalks.
Hmm.
And I think if any sort of project demanded sidewalks, this is a good place for it.
And I think what they're looking for is, anytime you have positive, negative, and then they have to weigh which way if they proceed with something, or if they modify things significantly based upon, any kind of comment.
It's too dense.
And, to get back to that bridge, what's the liability? What would be the cost of the town to put a bridge in for, to
Like
access
every
the
idea,
swamp?
the town's not gonna wanna get in the middle of that.
It's a land trust, maybe, or something. Whoever wants it.
Right, I mean, because it,
Doesn't have to be us.
there's a cost associated with it, and I mean, from a town point of view, ultimately, there's some liability associated with it.
Yeah, big time.
Absolutely.
Well, and if this contiguous means it has to be touching, that lot is not touching.
They
So it's
have
not
the,
contiguous.
Yeah, they
an
have-
or clause. Let's see, how do they phrase it? Or have a boundary line which is at no greater distance than 1,000 linear feet from any boundary line of the development parcel.
That looks, I don't know, it's kind of far.
Right, so I guess from one corner to
Looking
the
into
other
the lot,
parcel.
and where that lot is, it's, getting more.
Again, it's a whole new concept that the commission has.
Here's actually a great.
I got a
No,
question.
not right.
Contiguous.
Yeah, why was the cluster home removed from the regulations?
I mean, Charlie was here, he could probably tell you too, but I think every time anyone was proposed, I mean, everyone that was proposed was opposed so much.
So this is where the cluster houses.
And I think maybe we weren't happy with the ones that.
I think
approved.
the thought was maybe to look back at it at some point. It was an action taken. I think it came after Montgomery Village was probably the last one that was, that's been built under that.
And this is a lot denser than that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Again, on the developed parcel, I haven't
Mhm.
figured out what it's rated to the other one, but, any special use, there's public hearings and everything is, done, a subdivision, and I think that's why Shots Farm came in the way it did. Because it was a matter of, that you comply with regulations.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything you have to go to special use.
That was the time that we decided to back off on this cluster housing.
Hmm.
There was so much to do about that area, and we said, look, we were redoing the regs anyhow, why don't we take it off and then
Revisit
look at it later?
It just hasn't been revisited.
No.
I'm not in favor of non-contiguous. I think that opens up too much, because you can have open space somewhere else, and
That's been,
Doesn't make
that's been a
sense.
problem with open space right along, is that
Yeah.
it's been scattered.
Well, that's why we have the option of payment in lieu of land to keep from getting little 2-acre pieces here and there. Nobody knows of it, and they become a dumping ground.
And the properties are leased out to the East Shore Swamp Remote Plane Club.
Oh, that's the,
And, I mean,
No,
if it's leased, if the
they
property is
only
leased
use
out,
it for dollars, to just let
I see.
that club.
if the property is leased out, we can't take the bridge down, but we're responsible for the access.
That's if it's ours, we wouldn't probably do it. The town would.
That's what I'm thinking.
That's why we talked to David Sargent.
So what's our recommendation? Go back to the drawing board?
Well, and what I've heard is, you know, too dense and developed portion of it, not in favor of the non-contiguous open
Coverage.
space. Open space, some big amenities like sidewalks, separations. And that comes back to density.
Yeah. So you'll bring that, you'll send that back to them? Yeah, if they want to submit some, you know.
Yeah, but they were looking for comments, and that's, you know, because an initial comment, this is just their thought process.
There's a rumor that Honeywell's leaving North Branford.
They are leaving.
Okay, they are leaving North Branford. I was trying to be politically correct.
They are leaving.
So that being the case, how does that affect that cluster housing?
Well, that's for them to decide.
Well,
That's not,
it's not gonna, I mean,
that's all speculation.
let them figure that out. You know, and they didn't leave yet, I mean, so. And plus, I don't think that our recommendations are, I don't think our recommendations would differ whether they're there or not, so.
Well, that site is zoned I-3, Honeywell's site is zoned I-3, whereas this is zoned R-40, so there is that use difference.
Okey dokey. Moving along. Tell you, Carrie. Town planners report.
So our next meeting is November 6th. I haven't received any new applications. We have a few items that are continued to November 6th. So I'm not sure if people know their schedule yet, if you're able to attend that meeting or not, but I can follow up with you regarding quorum for that meeting. That meeting is scheduled to be at NBIS, North Branford Intermediate School. And then for now, we'll just have a hold on the November 20th meeting to see if we'll have applications come in between now and then or not. That's everything.
Anything else? Anybody else? Charlie? No, Charlie.
Move we adjourn.
Second. Is that, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you for joining us tonight.